Agartha is really fascinating because that is the one particular inner Earth civilization that claims to have the ruler of the world in their presence. The Dalai Lama is the terrestrial representative and admits to being the terrestrial representative of the inner Earth, of Agartha. The whole concept is that the human race lives on top of the earth. Great, we have a sun and a moon above us. But there are other civilizations and different civilizations that live beneath us in other layers of the inner earth and other regions of the inner earth. And this is alluded to in many ways in many pieces of literature and even in the Bible. Many of us grew up with the classics. So Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth, right? You know, these group of intrepid explorers and scientists who go down through a volcano and come back through another volcano, had this incredible journey. And they see a mammoth. They see a mammoth in the inner Earth. And I've always been really intrigued by that, and we can come on to that a bit later, but one of the most famous modern examples of a really esteemed individual who's gone to the inner earth also reported a mammoth. But, you know, it goes way back. I mean, even in the Old Testament, they say there were giants in the earth in those days, in the earth. And, you know, so there's many references to civilizations that live and are living today beneath our feet. And Agartha is really fascinating because that is the one particular inner earth civilization that claims to have the ruler of the world in their presence. The Dalai Lama is the terrestrial representative and admits to being the terrestrial representative of the inner earth, of Agartha. In 1985, he gave a very vivid quote. It basically said, if you have the right karmic connections, you can go there. It's a physical place in the human realm, but if you don't have the heritage, and he mentions karmic connection, you won't be allowed to enter. And there's entrances to various legendary, alleged entrances all over the world, but perhaps in Tibet we have some of the more famous ones of in palaces where there's entrances into Agartha that are guarded, and in the past, you know, people like Rorik and others have been given permission to go and see it and visit it. And it's been something that has been top of mind for a lot of explorers for a long time. Not far from where we're speaking now, there's one of my favorite examples of it. And okay, it's the 12th century, but it's the Green Children of Woolpit. It's the 12th century. Two children appear. I think like 5 and 7, a boy and a girl. Their skin is green. Their clothes are peculiar. They don't speak English. They can't eat human food. The boy struggles and he doesn't make it. He dies. The girl learns to consume some elements of our human diet and learns English. And in 1189 tells the tale to who is virtually the blogger of the day, William of Newburgh. Yeah. And what she has to say is astounding. You know, she says that she comes from a place that is venerated under the earth called St. Martin's Land. And she doesn't exactly know how she and her brother got to the surface, but they heard what really were church bells from Bury St. Edmunds and found herself on the surface. And she said where she comes from it's dim lit like our pre-dawn and dusk light. Although beyond the great river, there's a luminous light in the next inner earth world where it's a little brighter. It's the 12th century, and you know, we have 2 green children. Okay, so if like she said, you're in the inner Earth and you don't have the advantage of a powerful sun like we do, so you can kind of rationalize and intellectualize the fact that they have green skin. But that's always given me pause for thought about who else has green skin that we know of. I immediately think of Osiris. Okay, that's interesting. Well, who else? The Green Knight. I was just in the British Library and looking at the original Green Knight manuscript. Amazing. And not just the fact that his skin is green, but he does party tricks. He loses his head and he gets decapitated and puts it back on, no problem. The devil was green. Green and blue are pretty similar, aren't they? And Shiva and all that. So it's very, very interesting that there appears to be as many civilizations under our feet as there are, like Asia, Americas, Europe, Africa. Every single culture, you name a country on the planet, and they have a detailed mythology about the inner Earth. A different race that's non-human tends to be giant-like. A good example of that is the Nordic story. There's a book called The Smoky God of two Nordic sailors, a father and a son, and the storm sweeps them into a crevice. They think they're going on shore, but they end up going into an inner world where there's giants who live hundreds of years. And the other common denominator is advanced technology. There's flying craft. And coincidentally, they weren't comfortable with that, so they escape after a number of years. The father doesn't make it in the journey back. The son does. And of course, he tells everyone, as you would. And they're like, you're nuts. He went into an insane asylum for the rest of his life. But advanced technology and a non-human race in most cases, now there's some inconsistencies here in the stories, but in most cases, a benevolent race. Another really good example is a book called The Coming Race. It's about two miners who, one miner in particular, sees this luminous light in the mine, and he's always curious, how can there be a light coming from down below? So he rigs up some kit to get himself lowered down further into the floor of the mine, and it breaks, and he just dropped into this other world, which is not that far below his. And everyone's lovely. The people are amazing. They're very loving. They have advanced technology. They live really long lifespans. And it's this idyllic world that you don't want to leave once you've found. So that's another example. But the one I think we all kind of gravitate towards and is relatively recent and involves, the most respected and perhaps most highly medaled American military person is Admiral Byrd. Someone who's taken on a lot of very complex projects that involved a lot of people, a lot of logistical coordination, going to Antarctica, going to the North Pole. And Operation High Jump was a mission to set off in his plane to investigate from Antarctica. And in doing so, he kept a diary. We can go into what the diary says, but what I like about it is that it really echoes exactly what he said after Operation High Jump in the Chilean newspaper. He was interviewed, and he said, I'm really quite concerned because I think America is under threat from both poles with craft that are antagonistic, and they could destroy us at any time. And you can go Google it. It's an authentic Chilean newspaper interview, and of course the U.S. government just shut him up at that. They didn't stop his missions, but that was near the end of his career. But the diary says, 6 a.m. He takes off, and 3 hours into the flight, the machinery is starting to malfunction. Fine. Then he looks down. He's freaking out. Green pasture. Then the mammoth. Now, seriously, He sees a mammoth. And then he sees planes on either side of him kind of take over the control of his plane. He doesn't know how, and land his plane in this city of crystalline, red emanating crystal light. His very last entry comes from his final trip, not this trip, to which he says something to the effect of, "I have seen that center of the great unknown." But the last entry in his diary from Operation High Jump is he meets with the ruler of this particular inner Earth civilization, who tells him a message that we hear from a lot of initiates: when the time is right, we will come bail you out. When your civilization is in ruins, we're here. We're coming for you, and we'll help out. There is evidence that during the Second World War, the German people went and found refuge in the inner Earth at the poles. We believe that because they've left detailed instructions for your U-boat and submarine of the depth you need to go and where you need to turn and how you need to find it. They even managed to post a letter that said, "We're not coming back. This is much better than where we were." But is it human, or is it, there's talk of giants, advanced technology. I think it's going to vary based upon the level and the location. And this all sounds well and fine, right? It's a bit of fantasy land. And what I kind of try to ground myself with is, okay, well, what do the scientists say? So Edmund Halley, the Earth, they named a comet after him, right? The Earth has multiple layers and is probably inhabited. So Frederick Gauss takes it further and says there's probably an inner sun. Euler adds his own bit to it, and they all believe that the Earth is inhabited, and there's multiple layers. I did a show for One on Earth of the Kola borehole in Russia. It took 20 years to build, and it goes down 8 miles. 8 miles into the Earth, and what do they find? Fossils. And there's more. We now know there's more water and oceans in the Earth than on top of the Earth. Scientific fact. These scientists also say that the entrance to the inner Earth, the big entrance, the one that all the people who go there, like Byrd, they don't claim like they turn a corner in their boat or their plane and boom, wow, look at this. How did we get? No, it's really gradual. Sky changes slowly. All of a sudden, the ground is not white; it's green. Very gradual progression. How can that happen? Well, Halley, Euler, Gauss, Teed, who I love, says we're on the inside. We're not on the outside, and we can come back to that one because I think that is fascinating food for thought. But they say the entrances are at the poles. Okay, great. Well, let's look at some NASA diagrams of the poles, shall we? They're wide open. Let's look at Russian Mir diagrams of the pole, wide open. Okay, well, that's Russia. Let's look at Europe. ESA, wide open. And they, the scientists, Euler, all those guys, they say that the Aurora Borealis comes out of the poles. Very, very interesting. But now, no, sorry, all redacted. Just nondescript white stuff you see where the poles are. They don't show you the non-redacted images anymore. But when they show you an image of Saturn, for instance, it looks like a homogeneous surface to Saturn, except for the pole, which is a hexagon. Why is the pole different? And why have you put a hexagon in the? I don't understand. What is it about the poles that appear to be different? Come back to Teed, who says we're on the inside. Okay, so let's just humor that for a moment. There's this thing called the firmament, which all ancient cultures, Hebrew, all ancient cultures talk about this watery abyss that comes up like a dome over the earth. Classified, now unclassified documents that were meant to be unclassified to talk about XYZ, but really contain detailed reports about the fact that there's been missions to go up to photograph the firmament, to try to get past the firmament. You can't get past the firmament. There's PhDs who say the sun and the moon are within the firmament, but we can't get out. One of my favorite accounts is the Kingdom of Agartha, written by Alexander St. Ives, but really written by an initiate who comes from Agartha, and tells them all about it. So he writes the book, publishes it, and then goes, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So he goes and gets all the copies off the shelf, and just gets rid of them, except one. The publisher had, and actually it's Gerard Vincent, who creates the Martinist order, and he becomes quite a figure himself, but he publishes it. And in the book, the initiate says that the earth is covered like a checkerboard full of chambers. And again, it's that savior archetype of when you need the history of the arts and sciences for the past 56,000 years, they're going to be there preserved for you. They're ready. And the really ancient stuff is now below the oceans that used to not be oceans, but civilizations. And you can find these, but they're going to come to you when the government in Europe is right, and when you start behaving yourself spiritually, we'll give them to you. But if you seek them out, and the warnings are really, really dire. If you seek them out, good luck to you. You'll find them. You'll never leave that chamber. You won't be able to interpret what is there. And basically, once you're in, no one's going to hear you scream. We call it Project Restoration, and this is Klaus Dana and I, an expert on ancient relics and technologies and cultures. He's quite amazing. He's currently he's applied his technology to locate Japanese treasure chambers, the famous Yamashita's Gold in the Philippines, 215 feet underground. It's 67 meters. And I was talking about this at a conference, and the chap raised his hand and said, have you ever looked into the possibility that it could be 66.6? I said, no, we never have. I don't think. So what I am doing is trying to validate Klaus's technique with the world's most powerful satellites and the best dowsers who worked for Exxon, and advanced Italian GPR technology to validate it. The next excavation will be in the spring, and I don't want to go too off topic, but what we have noticed, what Klaus has noticed, again, he's the mastermind here, is where there's chambers of the inner earth, we believe at 67-ish meters, somehow others knew that, and they have put their stuff there too. For instance, Knights Templar, only not as deep. There seems to be a pattern and an awareness of that, which begs the question: how would you know? And it begs the question, why would you bury it? Would you bury it because bad people are secretly ruling the world, and you don't want them to destroy this valuable information and technology, or we're not ready for it? I really don't know. The question has to be raised of how much do we trust the history that's been brought down to us? And my answer is very, very little, very little. I think we need to revisit almost everything we think we know about everything. And you look at some of the old documents. Again, I mentioned the Old Testament saying there were giants in the earth in those days. And you have Moses going into Mount Sinai, not up it. So, I don't have the answer, but I have a lot of questions. And maybe the texts were altered. Maybe it was Moses going into the Great Pyramid. Maybe it was an entrance to the inner earth. We did a show on the giants of Sardinia, and you go to Sardinia and you speak to these people. They have no vested interest in lying to you. They're upset because they've given these artifacts over to trusted authorities who have just, as you say, buried them in the basement of the Smithsonian, and they're jaded, and they had an opportunity to capitalize on this amazing discovery. And now there's rumors. Okay, they're rumors, but there's rumors of U.S. military men having PTSD. In 2022, because they've had to fight giants who were picking soldiers up with one hand while smacking a whole bunch of the others with the other hand. Yeah, so the Alaska Triangle is really a show about the mysteries of Alaska, and you think, well, what mysteries? All you have to do is kind of reflect on the fact that, for instance, Texas is bigger than France. Alaska is twice the size of Texas and is extremely remote. And thus, natural phenomena, secluded location for military expeditions, all that sort of stuff we investigate on the show. And we call it the Alaska Triangle, but that's kind of figuratively speaking. That's kind of a play on the Bermuda Triangle. It's the first question I asked of, so where is the triangle? Is it Juneau to Fairbanks to Anchorage to, it's more of a concept than anything else. And you know what I really like about the show is, ever so respectfully, it has real authentic mysteries as opposed to, if I dare, the Bermuda Triangle, which is the much more famous mysterious triangle where ships and planes go missing. And you know what? I don't think any of that's true. And it's all pure invention. I'm talking about things that are mysteries. There's people and planes who kind of go missing. But there's always sort of an explanation. And I have done shows where we actually confront the fact that there really isn't any extraordinary mystery there. Okay, there a few decades ago, some of the really big ones, like the missing Douglas, 1950, 44 passengers, 6 crew, go missing, and it's a huge plane, and it goes missing, and it's never found, and there's UFO activity reported right before and right after. And if that were today, that would be worldwide news, and people would still be looking for it. But they kind of just swept it under the carpet, and you didn't hear about that again. The UFO lore in Alaska is almost difficult to distinguish between the military presence and what it would appear they're up to in that region. And that's not meant to be like speculative. I mean, if you have to have secret military bases to perform certain activities, right? And what better location? So I really get that. But there is so much that leaks through in terms of stories, not just UFOs, and there's lots of those, but one of my favorite is the underground pyramid. It's 1992, I believe, and there's a chap who's in the military since 81, and he's been studying the maps and saying, okay, the topographical maps, why is there all this black space around the mountain here? So you have all this stuff detail here, but over here is completely so he was always kind of fascinated with that. And then in 92, there was a television broadcast of seismic analysis that has revealed an underground pyramid. And he was like, no kidding. So he went to the television station and said, that's amazing. Can I have a copy of the report? To which they said, no. What report? His curiosity is really piqued now, and so he's researching. I forget what it was for the government, and he's at a place of where there's considerable archives, and he asked to go and look at a section on Alaska, and if I may call the person, the librarian, said, "Yeah, it's over there. Help yourself." I think you have clearance, don't you? And so he started to study these documents, which had insight into the whole subject, and he was physically accosted on that moment by guys saying, "Excuse me, you don't have clearance to look at that, and we're going to tell you right now, they don't want to be messed with anymore. We're not to mess with them anymore." Who's them? The whole concept of an underground pyramid with people that we're not supposed to mess with because they don't want to be messed with anymore brings up so many subjects. It's really, really interesting in terms of what's below our feet, not so much what's in the mountain, because there is, I think it was Pat Price, the chap's name, a remote viewer who has done a lot of work, very, very good, and has found that there is, for lack of a more intelligent term, alien, non-human races living beneath the ground in the vicinity of the mountain. We're actually not physically far from where Brian Moore lives and works and talks about this sort of thing. And when Brian Moore is asked, we have all this footage of other planets, why don't we see cities and buildings? And why don't we see signs of? And his answer is, what if it's beneath the surface? There's, of course, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but it's much more socially accepted that this creature exists. There's a great story of a guy on a boat who picks up another guy who wants to go downriver, and they go in the boat together, and the guy he's picked up falls asleep. So the guy who's driving wakes him up when he gets to the destination, and the guy goes, "Oh, thank you. Don't follow me, because I'm going to turn into a Bigfoot soon."
What?
I'm turning into a Bigfoot.
Well,
And he was really serious. "Don't follow me." Apparently a disproportional amount of military presence. There's one account of a military chap who just got transferred to a different base and noticed that there were loads of men with machine guns and all standing around something and protecting something. He didn't know what, so he went and examined it, and it was a sphinx. The men are guarding a sphinx. Is that what we're talking about? It's the localized legends I think are most fascinating. Stories that pertain to this little village or this part of Alaska. And one of them that comes to mind, which does appear, having said that, in a variety of places, is the Kushata. Kushata, which is this kind of concept of a lost soul. And it's thought to be like people who have gotten lost hiking, and they know they're not going to make it. And so their souls are kind of taken over by the Kushata. What they have reported when they have spoken about it is that if you become a Kushata, your soul is taken over. You grow hair all over your body. You frequently have the head of an otter. There's a really famous, I think it's SS Pachimo ship that got stuck in the ice, and the crew was able to get out, and then they went back and wanted to get the rest of the kit off the ship. It was gone. It was absolutely gone, and end of story. Until 38 years later, there it is, unmanned but seemingly in control on a river, just like it always had been. Yeah, and we hear about these ghost ships all over the world, but it just makes sense. You're not surprised when you hear about it in Alaska.